There are a lot of teams needing to show up in this split.
The Unicorns have phenomenal team fights.
Being part of the LCS is just for me that I can show what I can do on the stage.
Up goes the spider, and Cosq says not today.
Getting a new coach would put some new fire in the team.
Is in trouble, no support from the mid lane. First blood picked up by Trashy.
Group, you know, the team that I'm looking forward to play against is Splyce.
For Samix sinks the fangs in, Vitality trading damage back and forth. It's still back with the kill.
We as a team feel like we are getting better and growing as players.
We ended in good terms, but I still feel there's some heat.
Hello everyone and welcome to Berlin for more action in the EULCS Summer Split. Vitality and Splyce, they lost their first series last week and they are facing off in what could be a very important matchup in the fight for playoffs. We are live here from our studio and we see Vitality a bit earlier setting up on stage, Nuke Duck and Yamato Cannon, fashionable as always, as well as Kalbushar. Getting in the zone, Javu, the new coach for Splyce, knowing that there needs to be a win on the board for Splyce to get off to a better start in this week. Hello everyone, I'm Eva Schock-Supportere and I am following today's action alongside Martin de Visholunge and Henning Eklund.
Where do you follow us?
Where do you follow us? I'll follow you on the Rift. I'll follow you throughout the day. But well, it was an awesome day yesterday. We have 4 days of games, so we better gear up.
Sure, it should be actually pretty fun today as well. We got Mysterious Monkeys, Unicorns of Love. That's going to be a lot of kills. And the first one, I'm not sure. Is it going to be a lot of kills? It's going to be slow. I'm actually not really too sure yet.
Might be slow.
Yeah, the first one is going to be close for sure. And speaking of close, what we saw yesterday was a really close best of 3, which I really enjoyed, where Fnatic was able to really utilize their style to take down G2.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point. One of the best series so far in 2017 summer. And I know it's only week 2, but it does seem like this is one for the ages. The Kings were taken down, and it was a greatly entertaining one as well.
Exactly, and we got 3 games, which was super awesome. We even saw G2 leave the Shannon open twice, actually 3 times now, the Cannon and Shen combo, to kind of see if they could maybe beat it here on stage early on, but clearly without enough practice, they couldn't actually take down Fnatic.
And what I love so much is that Fnatic just stick to their style. They like to play on Reckless. Everyone knows that they do it, and they still go for the same plan 3 games in a row, ends up working out against G2, which we have to mention that they weren't as practiced as they should have been, perhaps.
But still, Fnatic won. That means now the fight for first place is wide open. It's going to be super awesome because it's 3-0 Fnatic, but we know G2 will pick it up later and really start hunting for that first place.
Yeah, we know that indeed, and when you are Fnatic, yeah, if you get those picks in, you can just beat teams with it. Why not? Don't show anything else. So, as you said, with that win, Fnatic, they have now secured themselves an early lead in the fight for the top spot in Group A, and that's a fantastic position to be in. 3-0 so far, 5-1 in games, and there we also see Misfits were able to pick up their very first victory in Group A when they beat Ninjas in Pajamas yesterday.
Yeah, weird game. Definitely a weird one, but I think if you're Misfits getting a 2-0, it's kind of what you wanted, and you can just move on now.
Yeah, it was time for that. Well, let's turn our attention to the upcoming matchups for today, where the teams from Group B hit the Rift for the first time this week. Mysterious Monkeys versus Unicorns of Love, as said later. We kick things off versus Splyce versus Vitality, and as said, it's going to be action-packed at the end of the day, as we're not sure what to expect from the first one, but the Monkeys and the Unicorns, they are going to fight.
Yeah, for sure. And I've got to say, we have high expectations on Unicorns of Love, because this might be the team that looked the strongest in week 1 versus the team that looked the weakest in week 1.
Great point. Well, we'll see how that plays out. Now, 2 teams that are hoping to fight for a top spot in Group B are Splyce and Vitality. They're facing off in their first series, and both teams got off to a bad start to the split last week. Splyce, a lot of ambitions. We're seeing, or we're waiting to see that Splyce, come back online, so to say.
And I love that you said they hope to be fighting for, you know, the top spots in Group B, because that kind of is the goal for both teams, but we obviously didn't see anything in week 1 that kind of impressed us. Splyce, specifically in the game 2 against H2K, got completely stumped with the Akali-Lucian composition, and we just want to see a bit more from a lot of the individual members on this lineup.
And a lot of that, or same remarks, go for Vitality. Also had a rough start. The Unicorns of Love decimated them if we look at, you know, the totality of the 2 games, although they did have some good moments.
Yeah, what I liked from Vitality in the first week was that they came into game 1 with a plan. They played against one of the strongest teams in Europe and were able to pick up first tower, first dragon, and Rift Herald. So Vitality had a plan, were able to execute it in the early game. But from there, things kind of went sour at the show.
Yeah, then went pretty downhill, and that's kind of the big thing for Vitality. You know, once they pick up the Rift Herald, there's some macro mistakes they make, and that's obviously what Yamato Cannon will kind of work on with these guys. But it's not just 1 week or 2 weeks. Like, that's probably the entire split, where plays like these need to just get removed.
Well, they can take the Rift Herald.
Take the Rift Herald. That's fine. That's fine. But then your no flash support should wait for his lanes to push before he goes into the river, because now you're actually, what you want to do is, you know, you want to push out bot lane, go mid, place the Rift Herald. Vander even sees Exile leave mid lane.
Yeah.
And he's like, ah, hey guys.
Yeah, I think this is one of the main problems for Vitality. Vander and Joko not coordinating when they go for the roams, when they're going to go to ward together to get that vision down. Instead, they're walking in on their own and versus a pick comp like UL had in that game. That's just not something you can do.
Yeah, no. And if you look at the matchups across the board, forgive me if this is a little too harsh, but it seems to be kind of battle of the mediocrity, I would say. A lot of the lanes don't really find their form, even from Splyce last split, except for that top lane from Splyce, and that's what we've always been talking about in Wonder. So how influential will that Wonder versus Cabo Shard matchup be?
Very influential, I'd say. This is going to be the big matchup that I'm looking for. I don't think we're going to be seeing Shen, Gragas just going at each other with the tanky boosters and forgo the laning phase. I think we're going to see aggression. We saw Vitality in game 1 last week. They saved the counter pick for Cabo Shard to get a Kled. Then he went 0 kills in both of the games, so really not performing. On the other hand, Wonderwear went for the Jarvan and the Akali. So I'm expecting carries, perhaps even something like a Fiora.
Old school Wonderwear. We also have the battle of the coaches. Javu is the new coach for Splyce. Yamato, of course, going up against his ex-team. He said, well, we left on amicable terms, but you still bring the heat. It's kind of like you leave a relationship on amicable terms, but you still want to be seen with a hot new boyfriend or girlfriend.
And beat the other one?
No, not at all. Hey, Chris Brown, chill. Not at all.
Right now, he wants to beat Splyce at least. And obviously, for Yamato Cannon, he comes in here knowing a lot of things about this Splyce lineup, because he was kind of the man who was part of building this team and kind of making them a team that could go to Worlds last year. So he should know a lot of the small trends. He should know exactly how the players are kind of thinking about the game. And that should give an advantage to Vitality when it comes to the pick and ban phase. I would be very surprised if Yamato Cannon, you know, lost this draft just based on everything he already knows about the Splyce players. Yeah, for sure. I'm expecting Yamato Cannon to come in with a clear plan and to have good drafts. I think the drafts from Splyce were a bit shaky last week, so for Vitality's sake, I'm hoping Yamato Cannon has found a way to deal with that. Well, he's won the short matchup, but that's often the case for Yamato.
Very true. Quick prediction for you guys. Who will take this and why, Henning?
Yesterday, the man next to me said, don't trust the Swede. I'm not going to trust the Danes today. I'm going to go Vitality. It's a close one, so 2-1, but Vitality is my pick.
Never trust the Danes.
I'm going Splyce.
Splyce.
I think...
Of course you are.
I mean, not based on the players or anything. I think Splyce will actually go in and play much better in the early laning phase than we saw last week. And then I actually trust more in their teamwork in the late game compared to Vitality, who still sits there with a new support, new coach. And that's why I think Splyce can take it.
All right, well, we will see what happens and what Yamato, Cannon, and Vitality can do against Splyce as we are moments away from Game 1. Take it away, Quick Shot.
Thank you very much, Sharks, and welcome everybody to our first series of the day. I'm Trevor Quickshot Henry, joined here by James Stress O'Leary, and it's Vitality taking on Splyce.
Yeah, everybody's mellow and yellow on this one, but I'm sure there's going to be a little bit more aggression when we get onto the Rift.
I certainly hope so, Stress. Let's check out the teams hitting the Rift in this series. Starting on the blue side, it is, of course, Splyce. The Snakes, in case you didn't know that. Wonder in the top lane, Trash in the jungle. Senkax mid. Kabi and Mickey looking cool as ever. 80 carry and support, and their new coach, Jeebus.
Yeah, and of course, their opponents, not to be without an animal spirit of their own. It's a bee, for those of you that haven't seen it, going up against them. It's Vitality on the red side of the Rift. In the top lane is Cabo Shard. Jungle is Joko. Mid lane is Nukeduck. 80 carry Sealback. Support Vander. And the coach, former Splyce coach, Yamato Cannon.
Yeah, some choice words, of course, on Twitter. We've already referenced that. Let's see, the reckoning. Let's see what can happen. Both Splyce and Vitality, a lot of questions to answer from week number 1. Looking at the player cams right now, and it was only Joko that entered the Splyce trance state that we got used to seeing during the spring splits, of course, leaning back, calming down. What are you expecting in picks and bans here, Stress?
I heavily expect Yamato to draft towards the tendencies of Splyce. I expect jungle presence away from Trashy, and as we say, that one has gone already. He may go far enough to start banning champions like Gragas that can flex to that jungle as well as play top lane. But Splyce, no strangers themselves to what Vitality have done, now taking another jungler off the pool with that Elise gone.
And there we go, Gragas, the immediate response. Trashy, of course, one of the players that had a challenging spring split. Jace, Elise, Gragas, Zac, Xayah, Thresh, Kennen. These are all champions that we've seen a lot throughout the course of the split.
I feel like you hit the mid lane pool next when it comes to phase 2 potentially, because Senkux, he is a player that isn't necessarily known for dominating the laning phase, and I think that's an area where Vitality could open this draft up if they get Senkux onto something that isn't quite so solid for them.
All right, let's see what happens as it plays out. The team composition you can see on your screen right now was Splyce last week. They played the Twitch Lucian. We have an insta-lock Kalista on the side of Vitality. That's caught us off guard, with champions like Lucian still up and available.
And the other AD carries as well. When you look at it, Varus, Ashe still up and available as well. Of course, Steelback is an AD carry that prides himself on mechanical strength, and now you have to be careful of something like a Lulu coming through to round out phase 1. But Splyce already picking this Thresh. Kalista should be able to evade some of Thresh's abilities a little easier perhaps than other AD carries do. But this is a strong bot lane. Varus Thresh has insane amounts of kill pressure in that laning phase. If a hook lands onto a Lulu, we saw that even Wolf from SKT couldn't hang in the bottom lane playing Lulu into Thresh. It's not a great matchup.
It's going to be difficult indeed. Let's see what Steelback can do. It's his first Kalista game this year on the stage. Varus locked in, as you mentioned, Stress, and there's the Kennen. I mentioned it a moment ago. Thresh, Kennen, and Xayah had 100% pick and ban throughout the course of summer. Now with Varus and Kalista, Xayah's going to go unpicked.
So this bottom lane here for Vitality, despite going away from the Xayah you're talking about, does have a lot of synergy when it comes to denying what Thresh wants to do. Braum typically a good matchup into the Thresh as well, and decent against Varus at the same time. So Vitality looking to make a statement in the bottom lane, and this is maybe looking for them to neutralize some of this mid lane presence that is going to start coming out from Splyce, but that's an interesting one. Malzahar banned out. Senkux did used to play that as a mid lane pick when it initially came back before a heavy set of nerfs to the damage. With Kassadin gone now as well, that's another synonymous Senkux champion being taken away, not the usual mid lane bans that we see.
Yeah, and of course that Malzahar played by Mickey a fair few times during the spring splits as well. Simplifies the engage potential. Ivern now taken another jungle champion removed from the pool. Joker's already got Kha'Zix.
Yeah.
And where does Trashy fall to from here?
Lee Sin is the stereotypical one that you normally default to early on. Graves is fine if he wants a farmer, but it reduces his ganking impact in this game.
That's fine. Trashy never ganks.
Or at least being around to counter gank, I guess. You can do it on Graves. It is possible. But I kind of like what Vitality have done in this draft, but it's very unorthodox. It feels almost like an anti-Splyce draft, which is what we were anticipating coming into this. But look, you've left Orianna, Syndra, LeBlanc, all available. Talia is another pick that we know Splyce play. And there's still all of these picks available.
And last week, unless I'm mistaken, Aurelion Sol was banned out towards Senkux multiple times. You've got some split pushing power in that cannon. Pick potential in Lee Sin. Senkux, what will you play? The safe pick? Secure pick? It looks like it's going to be the Syndra. We'll see what happens in a moment or two. Nukeduck will have the option to counter pick. And I absolutely love the word usage from Shox on the analyst desk. Strong words. Feels like a lot of these matchups are kind of the battle of mediocrity to see who is in the upper 60% and who is in the lower 40%, right?
Yeah.
If they're coming into this even at 50-50.
And you look at last split, that's where Vitality unfortunately sat, was in that 40% where they couldn't break through to the next echelon of play. Now though, We'll see what they can do against Splyce, because this draft has been heavily constructed against what Splyce are doing. You've got Senkux in a bad matchup. You've got Trashy on a champion he's not known for. And Wonder on a pick that has typically on competitive play not had the impact from the top lane that all the teams have seen in scrims. So this is an interesting draft setup by Yamato Cannon and the rest of Vitality.
And against his former team, if anybody's going to know the inner workings of the Splyce boys, 2 full splits with him, a tour at the World Championships last year as well.
A bad movie, you know, a bunch of albums, and one of them leaves. Oh, wait. That's something slightly different.
Exactly, one of them did leave. It was Yamato. Now we find out who the true scary Splyce is. Is it the former member or not? Now, okay, 2 things. This pick and ban, great in theory. Nuke Duck used to be a great assassin player. Notice the key word there, used to be. Now we need to see him reprise his role as Jeeves and Yamato Cannon shake hands leaving stage. Trashy on Lee Sin. Played it twice in the spring split. Both times were interesting. They were both losses as well.
Yeah, and as we said, it's not the type of champion that he typically is the most successful on. One thing you have to look at, though, for Splyce is they do have strong setups when ahead in the mid, in the top lane. Syndra and Kennen can become uncontrollable to deal with, and they have good push presence in the mid lane with the likes of a Varus later on into the game. So this could be a very interesting game with 2 different team compositions coming through.
It could, and we'll find out soon enough. It's Splyce taking on Vitality here in week 2 of the summer split. It is, of course, patch 7.11, which I forgot to mention in picks and bans. Let's see what these guys decide to build, where they decide to go. And let's see what impact Trashy can have in the early game. It's a guy that really kind of built up his brand this year with being a successful mid to late game player. Initiation tool, team fights, definitely scaling into his rank. And now he's on a champion that, while it is useful in the mid to late game, definitely much stronger in the early.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely stronger early. So as we head onto the Rift for this game, I feel like Vitality's composition maybe isn't necessarily the best composed unity of a comp. You, of course, have decent team fighting when it comes to the Kalista ultimate, the Rumble ultimate, these types of things. But you don't look at it and you say, okay, this is exactly what it does. They can control side lanes quite well with this Fizz, with this Rumble, but against Kennen, that doesn't really hold up for too long in the game.
Yeah, and that's something that Splyce will be looking to take advantage of if they can play long enough to get there. I'm looking down the summoner spells, double TPs on the side of Vitality. It's going to help shore up some of those weaknesses. Exhausts for both of our supports. Obviously, Fizz, Kha'Zix jumping in makes a whole lot of sense. And same on the other end, Lee Sin, Kennen. No shenanigans in the early game here, Stress. So, standard laning phase as we play out.
Yeah, Joko's going to get a little bit of assistance on the Raptors to start things off. And we'll see where Joko ends up going. We've had a couple of cheese plays out by junglers trying to get into lanes super early. You can do it on picks like Lee Sin. Haven't seen it so much out of Kha'Zix. A lot of junglers have sat back and just farmed their way up past 6 and tried to play a lot more passive style, which would favor Trashy's play style if that's the way they do, in fact, go on this game. You can see Joko will take red and then continue his jungle path.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on Trashy and Joko's impact later on. Cobby, Mickey going up against Steelback and Vanda. The race for level 2 here. But as you mentioned in picks and bans, Braum pretty good into Thresh. Has some tools to deal with him, and as it stands, Steelback pretty hard pushing that lane.
Yeah, Steelback is going to be able to help them get level 2 just a fraction of a second earlier, but you can see that Varus Thresh is very good at evening it up themselves. Was watching Joko on the map to see whether he was going to go into the Splyce jungle, but hitting level 3 off that wrist scuttle means Senkux has to be careful. He fell to a gank like this last week on Lucian.
He's going to do it again. Joko was involved in every first blood last week. Not going to pick it up yet. The Raptors are coming to help. First blood, Nuke Duck. Now Trashy's running away with his life. 200 hit points going low. Joko finds first blood in nearly every single game he plays.
And this is almost the same that happened last week for Vitality and for Splyce. Joko just going very aggressive early game, however, hook onto Vanda.
Vanda gets caught by the Flay, taking a lot of damage. Pierce from Steelback doesn't find his target, and the lane continues to reset.
So Senkux last week pushed up in game 2 on Lucian, a little bit later on into the game, but easily got ganked and was taken down by Jankos. This time around, it's Joko comes in from the backside of the lane, is able to take him down for this first blood. And you can see Senkux trying to play the bully phase of this lane. Before level 4, generally you can push a Fizz quite heavily in, but look, Senkux wasn't respecting the damage that's going to come from Kha'Zix, from Fizz, and in goes the first blood onto Nukeduck's Fizz. This is a great start.
It is a phenomenal start, and not the first time for Joko. He gets himself yet another first blood, contrasting that to Trashy. 20 first bloods for Joko out of his team's 21 this year, and they've played 32 games. That's 60%. 60% of his games he picks up first blood, and for a guy who really sort of struggles elsewhere in the game, it is up to Vitality to use these advantages a lot more clearly, because the crown, First Blood King, it hasn't been Jankos for a long time.
Yeah, it feels like that title may very well get passed over in the H2K Vitality series that we will inevitably end up seeing a couple of times this split. And, you know, that's a testament to Joko's growth as a player, because he came in, first of all, as a sub on the Unicorns, then the first few weeks of Vitality last split, playing Rengar, steps on a Caitlyn trap, dies under tower, and you're like, what is this guy doing? What is going on? Unfortunately for him, it wasn't the best start, but he has improved leaps and bounds when it looks at these early game phases for Vitality. The problem is they just need to kind of have that success later past the 15-minute mark, and that's the growth that I'm expecting a guy like Yamato Cannon to be able to bring to a team, because he did it with Splyce.
Well, it's an interesting question, right? Because with Splyce, you had these unmolded, untested, youthful players that learned and could grow under Yamato, who had a significant amount more stage experience than the Splyce boys when they joined. On the other hand, you've now got a group of players under Vitality with a lot of experience, and that old adage, can you teach an old dog new tricks?
Is it the equivalent of like grumpy old men at that point?
I mean, it depends if they win or not, because if they don't win, I've seen Vander be a little bit grumpy from time to time, if anyone follows his Twitter exploits.
Yeah, and after the Schalke series that they didn't perform in, and I think that's a real big thing that'll stick out for Vander, is he wants this team to do so well, because the last team he was on did not live up to the hype.
He never left LCS. I read that message from Vander.
Yeah, I don't know how much you can claim that one for.
Well, listen, what is a good sign for Vitality? Last week, even though they lost 2-0, hold that thought as Cobby's stepping a little far forward. Mickey's got the lantern at the ready, though. He's going to pull Cobby out. Those Vitality early game objectives. 2 out of 2 first bloods. They got first dragon, a bunch. First tower as well. They picked up the Rift Heralds. They didn't use them particularly well, but that can come with practice. I'm expecting that to develop. So Vitality early game, theoretically should be stronger than Splyce.
Yeah, and you look at how they were playing last week. Vitality looked very, very strong. As you said, got all of these objectives early and then kind of faltered when it came to that Rift Herald play. The analyst test talked about it to begin the day. Vander getting caught out made it very difficult for them to make a play. And you can see once again Vitality wanting to make plays, but things holding them back, like a ward in the bush, means that Splyce have the easy read on this. Playing up against Kalista Braum that are level 5, there's no threat here. That's not really going to go in the favor of Vitality, so Splyce can play it out very carefully. Trashy comes down to the bottom lane.
He's farmed till 6.
Yeah, he's there. Level 6 is here. Trashy has been given the easy early game on Lee Sin, or he didn't have to do anything.
Yeah, luckily in that case, Joko's early game still had the impact. He got that first blood. CS numbers are pretty even across the board, so nothing too exciting to speak of. Both door and shield lanes for AD carries here, so a lot of sustain and playing it safe. So it's really going to be up to earning those plays and unforced errors if Thresh hook goes wide, if Braum can find the right engage.
But that's where you then look at it with a pick like Lee Sin. If you have done nothing by the time you hit level 6, is that good enough? Is that enough out of a player that the enemy jungle gets involvement in First Blood and on Lee Sin, a pick that typically gets into lanes very effectively early on and can create kill pressure with something like a Syndra or a Kennen, depending on the matchup? You 0-0-0. Maybe it's a bit damning to go that far, but...
I agree. I think it's one of those things where it's like, hey, it's kind of a harsh question, but when a champion like Graves was available and open, and if you were going to go for a farming style, I think it's a fair question, right?
Yeah.
But now if Trashy pulls off the Godfist Lee Sin play, finds a kick onto Steelback or Cabo, then obviously, you know, we're silenced where we stand. So we just have to judge the play. Trashy has the potential to dive this Rumble. A lot of CC from Kennen, but he's not going for it yet.
Yeah, it just reveals himself on the ward there as well by killing it. So Cabochard knows that Trashy was around, but exiting. You can see there's a little bit of a trade between Trashy and Joko.
Yeah, of course, on the picture-in-picture, you can actually see Wonder's family. Have a shout-out to, hello, come to the studio, thank you so much. I actually have Wonder on my fantasy team. He said, thank you for believing me. I do believe in you. Get me those fantasy points. Totally unbiased caster.
That's how this series is going to be.
Yeah, I beat Vedius last week because he's a fantasy noob. So that's not really fair.
Yeah.
And these are the plays we were talking about. Trading ultimates.
Yep, good block from Cobby. Just is able to very easily catch steal back. Nobody burns a flash, nobody burns anything on that exchange. So it's one ult for one ult. And I want to maybe talk a little bit about the reason that Trashy might pick that Lee Sin. Graves offers almost no crowd control. And you look at this lineup, you've got Kennen, who's great once a fight is started, a little bit of pick from Syndra, a little bit from Thresh, some from Varus, but without somebody that can put themselves right out there in front of the team and actually get a fight started, they may have run into issues trying to catch a Kalista or a Fizz or these big damage picks that can actually punish you very heavily.
Yeah, and then we see Vander get caught by the Sonic Wave, but Trashy does not follow the Lee Syndrome. Keep an eye on your minimap. Splyce have backed away. Maybe they don't anticipate Vitality risking it for a red buff, or more likely just going to concede. It is a red buff. It's not worth a big team fight.
Yeah, at this point you can see they pushed out bottom lane. They're going to try and push out mid lane safely to start this. Red buff goes over to Vitality, but that's Splyce not committing into an area where they didn't have full vision control, that they didn't realistically have an advantageous fight. So that's a little bit of temperament from them. Rather than just chasing after a red buff, they know it's not necessarily worth it at this point in the game.
No, it's not. 10 minutes in, even on gold, despite giving up first blood. Wonder's got plus 10 in the top, plus 15 for Trashy in the jungle.
And
plus,
bot lane is going
plus
well.
nearly 20, 15 rather for Cobby. So a slow start to this game, somewhat expected. And now we're going to move into this mid game where Joko and Trashy could have some more options.
Watch for a TP bot lane. Hang on, look at where that ward is placed. Even though they know Joko's here, they can't react quite in time.
Glacial Fissure comes down, Lantern to safety. Cobby and Mickey make it out, and they get the TP.
Clean. Looked like they weren't going to be able to react in time, but as soon as that Lantern comes through, Cabo actually stops his teleport from completing, and it means that Cabochard's now stuck under tower in the top lane with a cannon pushing right the way up against the tower. Now Trashy takes Rift Herald as well. This is a pretty early Rift Herald, but we've seen them around this time, 11 to 12 minutes, and generally they don't have the highest utilization, but Cobby manages to get out of bottom lane.
Death Sentence comes down, Fate's Call is blocked, Cobby's flash was needed. Summoner spell secured, so this is the advantage to Vitality at the cost of a Rift Herald. A dive was slowly being set up, but Cobby and Mickey are now very juicy targets. Teleport for Nukeduck is available. No flashes for the bottom lane of Splyce.
And now they can just send Trashy up to the top side, maybe get that Rift Herald into top tower and secure the first tower of the game. Generally, it's going to be 100% success rate if there's nobody to defend the tower behind it. But look at what Vitality are looking for in the mid lane here as well. Splyce reacting, sending their bot lane up towards mid to try and create a second lane of pressure here. Try and deny Vitality's response of pushing out any other lane.
And tower first blood secured by Splyce. That's going to give them a small gold advantage. Look at the minimap. No support yet for Vitality. And while Cabok is going to be able to defend, this inner turret will take a lot of damage.
Yeah, and they're pushing mid lane at the same time. So Splyce trying to hit 2 points on the map. Top tower should not fall here with Rumble being able to push up. Rift Herald will end up dying. But look, Splyce are trying to control mid lane and top lane at the same time.
It's just exactly where these teams have consistently performed. Vitality's opening few minutes, pretty good. Sealback will take a couple of autos, but the end cost is 2 towers for 1 and 80% HP on the inner turret. Like, Splyce are going to be ecstatic with that trade of objectives.
And keep in mind, this is the type of lane that Wonder can take over with. This cannon will be a lane bully.
Remember to eat your vegetables, ladies and gentlemen. Just recalling an award. The debris falls on top of Cobby's corpse.
That feels bad. Cobby maybe a little bit of a reckless place to recall out there, but I mean, NukeDuck now at 2-0, that actually does create a significant problem because at some point, Wonder and NukeDuck are going to come 1 versus 1 against each other, and I want to watch that trade happen because not often you see Kennen and Fizz go up against each other, potentially in a long lane. That'll be an interesting one when the Fizz is already 2-0 to track how that one works, but at this point, you can see Vitality after pushing bottom lane in response. Now they take Steel back to the mid lane, and they'll just hold him here for as long as they need to. I wonder whether they'll send him out to the side lane like Fnatic do with Reckless every now and again and bring him back into the middle lane, but that remains to be seen as this game goes on. Yeah, a lot of options, a lot of lanes to focus. The Dragon hasn't been started until this very second. 14 minutes in for a Mountain Drake, and it's in full vision of Splyce. It feels like every time a play happens, both teams are going to be fully aware of it. Trashy could go for a hero play. Gonna land the Sonic Wave if he decides to fire it. Stood on top of a ward, 1300 HP. Joko's gonna cancel this one out. Piercing Arrow goes down, and Joko easily picks up that Mountain Drake. Vitality continue their string of strong early game objectives. Yeah, well composed, able to know that, you know, Trashy can't follow up over the pit if they end up withdrawing back. You just saw Senkox have his Banshee's Veil popped as this fight is about to start. And end! Fate's call. That's one of the strengths of the Banshee's Veil, though. We're seeing it, people build it quite commonly, even as a first item. It's more akin to the old Abyssal Scepter, but with the Banshee's shield still on it. Now, against this composition, Kalista, Braum, where else is the crowd control coming from? Maybe a Fizz Fish, but if you got a Banshee's, the first thing that hits... Stress. Okay. Vitality and Yamato are subscribing to the strongest form of crowd control. Okay. Death. They have a Rumble, a Kha'Zix, and a Fizz. Yeah, well, that's true. That's true, but I don't think Splyce is just going to stand and wait for the train, or I guess the fish at this point, to come towards him. So Banshees does give them a little bit of an advantage when it comes to the actual catching of fights. Trashy doesn't have one. Can NukeDuck catch Trashy? All right, Chum the Waters goes out, almost full range. Cathian, no, that's the wrong one. Urchin Strike goes out, Playful Trickster. That would be a very different ult if a Cathian surprise started running away. I guess you've got Pugmore, so anything can happen. Well, NukeDuck not fared enough yet to 100-0 Trashy, but at least got his flash once again. And it's just a slower paced game. I mean, Vitality, despite being down a tower, they're even on gold. You can see the differences. Only really in the top lane were significant differences. 400 gold bonus here for Steelback versus 1,000 gold up top in favor of Wonder. Yeah, of course, that tower going down in the top side as well gives Splyce a little bit of that extra gold coming through. So for Splyce, this is a good situation for them to be in, but it's very reminiscent of the situation they were in against H2K, where you have a slight lead, but you don't necessarily have advantages on the map. And as we head towards the bottom lane, they've hooked in Joko. They have indeed. His leap got interrupted as well. Joko kicked away, and Trashy gets the kill. Clinical as they go over the ward. Joko just gets caught out, forced to jump, forced to flash, interrupted just about everything. And Splyce with a composition, with a Thresh, with a Syndra. We said that they're going to have to rely a little bit on picks when it comes to getting fights started. Well, that one works out perfectly for their first of the game. Last week, when we hit this stage of the game, Vitality made some misplays that the Unicorns punished very severely. Some lack of synergy in terms of calls, being caught out a little bit. This is on the side of Vitality. Let's see if they've been able to adjust and adapt from that series last week, and also if Splyce can punish those mistakes as and when they appear. Yeah, those mistakes were based on walking over warded areas. You mean like this? Getting unsurprisingly hooked in last week, and this time it's Joko getting hooked. Easy kill for Splyce. 3 versus 2. NukeDuck didn't even bother to get involved in the fight because at that point, Joko's already dead. Yeah. As simple as that. Yeah, it really is. Joko walks over a ward, tries to do Grom, gets hooked, dies. Okay, let's go. Let's get back into the game from that for Joko, I guess. One of the narratives we had yesterday was discussing good and bad Baron setups. And now we're getting to a point where that will be a talking point, nearing 20 minutes, and knowing both of these teams, their penchant for the late game. For better or worse. But no traditional tank, really, on either side. So significantly more risky
And I want to see how they set it up. That's what we're looking for when we get to that point.
So this isn't necessarily a Baron setup point, but if you look at the vision that Vitality have specifically, while Joko died, they actually achieved a row of pink wards and a row of trinket wards to set out throughout the Splyce jungle. So they will see the next set of players coming as Splyce sweep out the vision on the river. But, you know, it was a good setup to deny Splyce any further aggression from that. So I like that Vitality is still maintaining some sense of vision control despite the pick.
Yeah, and of course, talking about that vision, observers highlighted just how many wards Splyce have had down all game long, it feels like. Really, really impressive. We'll keep our eyes on those control wards as there's not a lot in the inventory with Dragon coming up in 1.5 minutes. 2 items completed for Wonder. Wits End, Blood of the Rune King. Zeal item being worked towards for Cobby. On the other side, same is true for Steelback. And both teams making it clear they're interested in this Dragon.
Now, the funny thing here is I think Splyce can actually take some liberties around not necessarily starting this Dragon themselves, because you're also looking to try and get the teleport from Cabochard at the same time, because Wonder can push that tower very quickly, and as long as the fight isn't already in process, then join the fight after pushing up. And from that point, Splyce may be able to get 2 sets of objectives if they play it carefully.
Yeah, they pushed out the bottom lane, pushed out the middle lane. Remember all the damage Rift Herald did to that inner turret top. And he's Wonder. They don't even need to force the teleports. Very reminiscent of just good mid-game macro play here for Splyce.
And now they'll do the opposite on the bottom side. Hook lands onto a minion, so it's not actually going to do anything much here with a Thresh and a Fizz. I don't necessarily think a pick would happen in mid lane. But Wonder's next objective is move down to the bottom side, maybe do the same there, try and draw Cabochard into one of these towers bot lane, and push it back, try and get another objective after this Dragon has gone, because then you're making presence around that Baron, and you were talking about Dragon setups being so very important.
And really difficult. That pink ward just to the right of your screen does not actually spot the Splyce invisible ward. So Splyce with a little bit of information as their ward is hidden around a corner. Good Lantern comes up from Mickey, but he's caught by Chumba Waters. Puts down the box, flashes defensively. Joko gets the power unleashed. Here comes Trashy. He's taking him down.
Here's Wonder.
Second of the kill. Wonder's running for his life. That teleport, definitely a zoning one. Chain of corruption starting to spread as Cabo gets taken down. Mickey finally falls prey. And Wonder just takes Vitality on a ring around the rosy.
Yeah, Wonder drew 3 members of Vitality back away from the fight as Cabochard actually TP'd in. So at first he looked to go aggressive, maybe looking to flash in with the ultimate, but recognized he would be on his own. The rest of Splyce weren't quite ready to fight themselves, but at the same time, that's 2 kills, plus the Infernal Drake going down in exchange for Mickey's life.
Yeah, and a lot of damage being put onto Steelback from a combo from Senkax. He's starting to scale up, but crucially, Splyce get the Dragon. Here's a replay.
Yeah, so Splyce are able to save Senkax utilizing the Thresh Lantern there, and you can see Mickey trying to create this pick. Actually eats the Fizz ult when he didn't necessarily have to, but from here, TP is so far back in the lane that Splyce is still, just about under their tower when it completes. Wonder could cut down, but he would risk getting hit by the Kalista ultimate. Then Cabochard's in the fight as well, trying to kill the rest of Splyce, but Wonder's done enough holding Vitality back. The Cabo can't do anything 1 versus 3, and everything ends up in Splyce's favor.
It does, but not the fantasy points.
Is that all you care about in this game?
Not all.
Okay.
But I'm heavily interested in it. It's definitely something that I will be annoying you with throughout the course of the series, Stress. So
people don't know how much you talk about this during the week either. So when we get to this point, people go like, stop acting annoyed. Stop acting like he only talks about it now.
No, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. Especially when you win. You get to gloat for 7 full days. It's fantastic. Well, take a look at the items again as Splyce extend their gold lead to a very sneaky 4,000.
Speaking of sneaky.
Sneaky. Nuke Duck.
This is the 1v1 we were talking about.
Thing is, 2,100 hit points, no flash. It is Hourglass Protobelt. I don't know if Nuke Duck got the damage.
I don't know, especially because in a sustained fight, Wonder, he's got the Wits End, got that magic resistance, he's got the Blade of the Ruined King as well. Like, no, Nuke Duck didn't want the fight.
We're never going to see it. Well, that's not fair. We might see it. We're just not seeing it now. Let's see what what NukeDuck can do. He's still got the teleport available. Wonder does not. And notice how all of a sudden the Splyce group is a little more defensive. Wonder can't be pushing as heavily, and he's making his way to the rest of the core team.
NukeDuck was rumbled, was able to spot him out there on that Scryer's Bloom. So with Wonder basically controlling the side lane, it is kind of difficult for Vitality to do too much more. But if they can bring Joko here, oh, flash into the Fish.
Fish connects, Chum the Waters is going to put a lot of damage in a 2v1. Wonder's in trouble, running for his life. Kill secured, NukeDuck.
And now you look at the map and you say, okay, what was Splyce doing at this time? Now they head towards Baron, but Wonder's already dead. They've lost control of that side lane. Now NukeDuck with TP takes control of bottom lane, pushes it out up towards the tower, and can cut in behind Splyce if he chooses to.
And so crucial. That was the flash that Wonder used to win the previous team fight. The window of opportunity still in favor of Vitality. Good kick flash from Trashy. Death sentence finds Cabo. And Cobby is on the board with another.
Okay, there's the reaction from Splyce. They've got full vision control on the top side of the map now. Cabo is on the respawn for 35 seconds now, and at this point, Splyce can look to double down on that vision control, push out the top lane, recall back and get there. But look, NukeDuck takes an uncontested tower in the bottom lane because nobody could react in time. It's individual plays that almost have no connection between each other and very little consequence in favor of Splyce now, because Vitality just somewhat closed some of the gap here. This is nice out of Trashy being able to go aggressive. You see the mechanics come through, all those Lee Sin games that we've been boasting about Trashy playing.
Boasting's the word. I don't think it's the one we used though. But yeah, good mid-game play here from Trashy. 2-0-2. Those were the plays that we needed to see because you couldn't have done that on a Graves.
Yeah.
Well done. There's a play-by-play line if ever I've heard one. But important to see them happen because it is a little bit of a meme. Trashy and Lee Sin. Mickey's going to be the target of Fate's call. Senkax continues to play on the flank. Gigantic bunny rabbit. Not going to find anyone to eat just yet. Defensive flash from Vander. Wonder connects as well. That's a great equalizer from Cabo Shot. Vitality's re-engage is starting to sting. A kill onto Wonder. Steelback loses his life in trade though. Senkax going low. The Lantern pulls him to safety, but NukeDuck gets the shutdown. Joko's looking for another. And Yamato is celebrating. Fight victorious for Vitality.
Yeah, Vitality with a good counter engage because Splyce were trying to come into that fight from one side. Wonder had to flash forward to try and even just get one stun in that fight. And from there, Splyce continued to try and chase. Mickey was a lot more concerned with Trashy and Senkuk's safety than Cobby's because Cobby was desperately trying to chase down Steelback for the duration of the second half of the fight. And for now, Splyce recognized that Vitality haven't started the Baron yet, and they don't rush towards what was inevitably a trap.
Yeah, look at the ring of vision around the Baron pit. Splyce haven't stepped too far forward yet. Banshee's Veil gets popped. NukeDuck finds Chum the Waters. Scatter the weak buys a few seconds of time. Senkax goes down. Joko on the board.
They'd bought enough time that Splyce thought, okay, maybe now they are doing Baron. Maybe they were waiting and started because there was no vision on the Baron pit. Splyce getting a little bit antsy and Senkux drifts way too close to the pit, gets taken down. It's got a bit messy over the last couple of minutes. These open fights on the map where nobody really has the full advantage. Shoko, avoids Trashy.
Yeah, Trashy didn't find the kick or the angle. Wonder's running for his life. Equalizer's already been used and NukeDuck completes a teleport. Wonder's locked down in the river. NukeDuck gets caught by the chain of corruption, goes golden. The bunny ears looking for more. And NukeDuck is able to dissuade Splyce's re-engage. They've got a 5-on-3 at best because Senkax is only just respawning.
And this is one of the difficulties that we have seen for weeks. Even in the spring split when people were playing Kennen from the top lane as this AD style, it's difficult to have impact in fights with Wonderwear TPing in, not quite matching the right angle to get into a fight safely and taken down. This time it wasn't even a TP that brought him into this. He just runs into this, trying to save Trashy. Wonder's left on his own. Nobody can really buy enough time to get him out of this fight, so he tries to stand his ground, tries desperately to take out Vander, but 4 versus 1 isn't fair. And this Kennen suddenly has no impact anymore.
And just like that, a 4,000 gold lead swings. Splyce are now down 1,000 gold. roughly, and Baron buff on Vitality. They only had 2 towers secured before this. And with Baron, I'm sure they can set up more. Jeeves, the man on your screen there, a little bit shocked and stunned as Splyce have been pulled apart by the team comp that was drafted by Yamato. We talked about the uniqueness of this, maybe lacking synergy in places, but it doesn't matter when executed punishing Splyce.
But Wonder has been neutralized. Trashy is on a champion that he looks more neutral on. Senkux has been neutralized through the laning phase as well. Opposite of 4-0 Fizz in this game. Now makes it almost impossible to kill. Kobe is the only threat left on Splyce that Vitality have to play around, and in fights, he's been an easy target.
Stress, we're nearly 30 minutes in, and Senkux still does not have a kill. Do you think he could end this game with 0 kills?
I mean, he's on a Syndra, if you end 0 kills, but look at it, he's got Banshees, Morellos. This isn't massive amounts of AP at this point of the game.
Senkux, will you find it? We have a great story to tell if we get the time. Senkux is running away as Vitality with Baron are being held at arm's reach in the mid lane. They've got a Baron-empowered minion, but Kobe's going to try to clear it out, and we'll try to get back to the stat story later. Keep looking for Senkux. Will he kill anybody? Don't know yet.
I want to look away from that story for a moment. That has some legs later on. I want to look at what Steelback has in his inventory. Steelback used to be on Fnatic. He's feeling the vibes in the air. He's getting one of these, you know, micro-heavy 80 carries that likes to duel around fights. And he's going towards the Frozen Mallet, Trevor.
Hey, if it works for Reckless, why can it not work for someone else? Vitality have taken 2 more towers. Steelback starting to get beefier and tankier. Gonna work in his favor, and they're not done yet. A minute left on Baron, Stress, and they're running Splyce in circles.
Yeah, look at it. I mean, nobody can duel Nuke Duck on his own. Now that you put Cabochard alongside him, that pushing power just it's escalated. With no teleport on Nuke Duck, though, they do have to be careful that Splyce don't start a fight when only Cabochard can join. But looking at the disparity that they're in, that's actually a tricky thing for Splyce to implement. That would require that flank from Wonder that we've been talking about is so difficult to actually implement on this style of champion.
All right, story time.
Okay.
There are 50 starters in the EULCS, 10 teams, 5 main players per team, right? If you look at all the starters who played 10 or more games this year in the 2017 season, there are only 3 players that have secured a kill in every single game they've played. One of them is Vizicachi.
Okay.
One of them's Febevin. One of them's Senkux.
Wait, what? Where's, like, Perks? And
yep, he's had a game with no kills.
Sven?
Game with no kills.
Reckless?
Game with no kills.
Oh.
Remember, Reckless plays side lanes with some help at times. He doesn't need to get kills. So if Senkux does not get a kill this game, he's scratched from that list, and then there will be only 2. And then we'll set ourselves up for a Highlander matchup when UOL play HDK.
On Sunday.
Oh,
Sunday.
Look at this. See, I told you our story was going to be good. The audience is a little confused and lost. I'll write it down. You guys can keep up a little later. Death Sentence connects onto Joko, but nobody gets killed yet. And Vitality, lacking some vision. I'd like to see some more wards. There's the Dragon coming up in a few minutes. And then when they have those wards, Stress, they can look to kill Splyce.
Yeah, they can look to deny Senkux any kills. You know, 2 hours ago, Trevor was given that stat by our stats team, and his first thoughts were, that is a rubbish stat. I'm never using that.
You're a liar. I loved every second of it.
Well, I know what I heard from that. Trevor was like, it's rubbish, never doing it. 2 minutes later, you're like, give it to me. I want a graphic, I want to tell the story.
There is a part of the job that entails acting. And I did not need to act for that stat. Nuke Duck forgot what a Banshee's Veil does, and his Chum the Waters finds nobody. Chain of Corruption is starting to spread, and no one's killed yet. Senkux scatters the weak, and Vander and Steelback knocked back for a moment or 2. Exhaust goes down into Steelback, and the Glacial Fissure sentences Mickey to death. Senkux goes down, that's a double kill for Steelback. It's a turnaround though. Splyce have got more. They've got another onto Cabochard. Joko, run for your life. Wonder stuns him up with the electricity. Trashy ward hops forward. Nuke Duck needs to Urchin strike through a minion. Playful Trickster will be available very, very soon, but he can't stand toe-to-toe with 2 members of Splyce. How did Splyce win that fight?
Well, Splyce had a good counter engage. The fish is already back up. Remember, that started this fight out, and Ooh, Vitality managed to get away with only Nuke Duck remaining in that fight. So Nuke Duck opens up with the fish, as he said, onto Banshee's Veil. Senkux doesn't really get too much from this, and watch where Wonder comes from. That's what I want to look for. It's what we've been tracking this entire game. So Senkux split up from the fight. Wonder over on the side is able to force the Zhonya's from Nuke Duck, and now Steelback, exhausted on the left side of your screen, gets taken out, and he's one of the big team fighting proponents. Trashy was able to get a kickoff that delayed the save on Steelback, and it was enough to end the fight in favor of Splyce. And at the end of it all, Nuke Duck's score reads 4-0-4. Senkux kills not found.
Only three players have got a kill in every single game. Senkux may be on the verge of being removed from that list. Vitality still maintain the gold lead, but as it appears, these team fights doesn't really matter. Splyce have had their first big victory in a little while, and Stress Baron's up in 20 seconds. Mountain Dragon is alive. That's what both of these teams are sort of posturing around. But there's not enough vision, not enough wards. Trashy tries to ward Hup out. Scatter the weak, locks down Vander for a few seconds. Fate's Call can be used if needed, but Steelback holds onto the cooldown.
And you look at the number of threats that Vitality have in comparison to Splyce. You see that Steelback is heavily up, 2,000 gold up against Cobby. He's just so strong in these fights that if he stays alive, Steelback should be able to carry this game through. The same can be said for Nuke Duck, but Steelback died, Nuke Duck ended up 2 versus 1, and again, Splyce are trying to fight.
Steelback is under a lot of threat. He's stunned, he's locked down. The Frozen Mallet's keeping him up. Lifesteal for a few more seconds. Steelback finally goes down. Senkux gets his kill. Now Splyce look to take down the rest of Vitality. Cobby gets onto Joko, finds a double onto Nuke Duck, finds a triple onto Vander.
That fight couldn't have gone much better for Splyce, and from being behind, they find the target on Steelback's back, and they're able to take him down quickly as the first kill of the fight, and then they just continue to move through the rest of it, and for some reason Vitality just weren't defending their AD carry.
And so crucially, it was Senkux that got the kill. It makes our story so worthwhile. Gonna take down Cabo Shot, that's the ace.
And that's the end of the game.
There's no one to defend. Vitality put up a fight, but Splyce knocked them out.
Execution on the team fight from ahead was what cost Vitality. Steelback got caught out. This was a composition that should have done quite well against the pick style that Splyce were trying to run, but one fight, Steelback dies, no flash was available, and suddenly the game ends in favor of Splyce.
Suddenly, the game just ended.
I said that Steelback died quickly. It did take a while, but...
It took a while, but then when he died, it was a quick death.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, just got, you know, bopped on the head by that sphere. Trashy, 3-0-10 on Lee Sin.
Yeah.
Mid to late game had the impact, no doubt. But the early game, it's one of those interesting ones where if you really want to be nitpicky, you can.
Yeah.
But crucially, had the mechanical plays, found the targets, and was one of the players for Splyce involved in catching Steelback at the end.
It was decent enough with the mid game when you look at it to say, okay, maybe we don't all in so much on Trashy because it isn't necessarily a weak pick for him. Not the best Lee Sin performance we've ever seen, but at the same time, still
for Trashy,
a solid enough pick.
For Trashy, it just might be. But Yamato and Vitality, by the way, pretty strong faces. They had control of that game.
And then you look down at the scoreboard, and Cobby, through the last 2 fights, gets to 8 kills. We talked about how he was the last remaining threat. Well, as long as he survived, as long as he got the damage down, Splyce turned these fights back in their favor. And from what looked to be a real struggle of a game that Vitality looked like they were going to shut out, Splyce turn on its head, get one good fight to end it. And Vitality, from a comp they drafted against Splyce to trying to play around how Splyce's weaknesses perform, they couldn't close the game.
Both of these teams had very minimal changes coming into the summer split. New coach for Splyce, new support for Vitality, but the game played out exactly as expected. Vitality early game, Splyce mid to late game. They're off to a good start in this series. Tell us what you think about it with the guys, Shocks.
Thank you very much. If anything, the end of that game was very, very scrappy. We're going to start by taking a look at picks and bans because we spoke a lot about Yamato having an advantage in the draft phase versus Splyce because he knows the team so well. So do you feel that this draft showed that he was looking for answers and found some answers versus the Splyce draft?
I think the draft was fairly even. I don't think Yamato Cannon got a big advantage by any means in this draft, but I don't think he lost it either, if that makes sense. Like, they gave something away, like they gave the Cannon, picked the Rumble, okay, that's a losing matchup then, at least later on in the game, but then also in the mid lane, they got the counter pick for Fizz. So they were kind of trading solo lane picks against each other, which obviously ended up kind of impacting the game a lot.
Yeah, I do have a bit of a question for you guys. The Cannon is something that we saw banned out so much for a long time. We saw it obviously yesterday coming out versus, or Fnatic got their hands on it a lot of times, but in the top lane also, why do you think it is that all of a sudden we're seeing it more? Has the priority just shifted?
It's just putting on so much pressure in towards the laning phase. It's so hard for a melee champion to do anything in the lane versus Cannon. And then he also transitions well into being a split pusher in the late game. Some people have called him a ranged Tryndamere. I kind of agree.
Oh, okay. Well, we definitely saw that. We heard Trevor there saying the early game for Vitality. However, it seemed that even though Vitality got some kills and some advantages, Splyce still kept like their hands on the reins when it came to the early game macro.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Vitality came in with a plan. They wanted to get the Fizz snowballing, and they were able to do so early. Later on, those Splyce take over with a macro game.
Yeah, that was kind of thing, like, early game, very early on, I agree that Nuke got a few kills and that put Vitality ahead, but I think very quickly after that, Splyce actually had really good plays, you know, swapping to top lane, so not swapping to top lane, but moving Trashy to top lane, take Rift Herald, get top lane towers into mid tower. Like, Splyce had much better early macro than we actually saw from Vitality, and we were kind of sitting and being like, Vitality, you need to start forcing a fight now.
Be proactive.
Yeah, because the Cannon is going to win the game in the side, and if you do nothing, you have Fizz ulti, you have, of course, Kalista Braum to, like, start a fight, and nothing really happened until, like, 20 minutes.
Yeah, I think the tower point comes down a lot to Vitality's draft because they have very little wave clear, they have very little siege potential, so it's really hard for them to do anything but force the team fights, and they didn't do so in the early mid game.
No, and as you said, at a certain point, the game was pretty slow, and then it accelerated. Vitality probably felt the pressure, or Splyce felt the pressure, and we saw a lot of fights bursting out. We want to take a look at one where Vitality gets the upper hand and are able to get a huge advantage.
Yeah, this is what we wanted to see from them, because again, when you use Fizz, like, his ulti is so long range, it's very easy to actually try and hit just one target and use that to then engage with your entire team. And Nuke played a really nice game where he created a lot of picks on Fizz specifically, so it's a kill early. Splyce tries to contest around the Baron as 4 members, which is a very questionable decision, and obviously get punished for it instantly, and this actually gives Baron over to Vitality, and they earn like, what, 6,000-7,000 gold?
6k gold swing after that.
6k gold by getting off, of course, this Baron here, and it was kind of interesting because it was Vitality not really realizing, okay, how do we start a fight? They then learned how to take the fight, and then Splyce were kind of running right into it and actually handing a lot of things over to Vitality.
Yeah, I think that was an instance where Vitality was kind of handed the fight to them. They also were able to set up some good vision control around the Baron, so forcing Splyce to face check, as you said, with 4 people, and with a Fizz when it's getting so far ahead, it's really dangerous. They have to be so careful around the Baron area, so that was a good turn of events for Vitality for sure.
Definitely was a big gold swing. They know what to do. They push a lot of towers with that Baron. They are in a good position, and you'd like to think that then they would also have the upper hand in starting the fights, and they definitely felt more confident, I feel like, in those fights, but somehow Splyce managed to turn them around. So what in the fights that we're going to see turns it around, or what is played incorrectly for Splyce to kind of get the advantage in the end?
I think this is an interesting fight for Vitality because they are able to almost pick off Mickey, but this is a weird position to fight, and the equalizer goes wide from Cabochard, and as we can see on the zoomed out picture here, Steelback and Vander dives in while Cabo and Nuke and Joke are in a completely different position.
Still looks
so here
good though.
They are too split up though. They aren't able to burst down Kabi as well. There's so much life steal. He went for the Maw in his build this game, so he's able to put down a lot of damage before he dies, and in the end, not enough for Vitality.
But like, when it comes down to this, it seems like it could have gone the other way.
Yeah, of course, and that's where you look at the small individual mistakes, like again, that equalizer from Cabochard going completely wide, not really hitting anyone. Like, imagine if that was going down on the 3 guys that they were actually fighting against, while Steelback was busy on the other side. That would have been fantastic for Vitality.
And look at that swing.
It's a massive swing, but then at the very end, Splyce are like, nah, we're gonna get that goal lead back and actually win the game, because obviously they win the following fight and use that. But whenever games are that close, it's always like just key individual things you can look at, being like, ooh, Equalizer was wrong, ooh, Steelback maybe jumped a little bit too far, and he got into tower as well, and then he split up, as you highlighted, Henning, and tiny things can just lose you the fight late game.
Yeah, for sure. And looking at this post-game graph, we also have to mention the Dragons, which were definitely in Splyce's favor. 2 Infernals with 3.5 Infernal users on the team really is what can swing those kind of close team fights when the goal is really even.
So Splyce, they got the job done in the end, but do you walk away with a kind of more positive feeling about Vitality overall compared to what you saw last week after this game 1?
More positive feeling about NukeDuck and his Fizz performance, but actually him and Joko together were really good at setting it up. But I have more positive for Splyce, because even with them losing so many kills in the mid lane, they actually still managed to play pretty well in the mid game around the turrets. And then, yes, okay, there were some late game fights where they struggled against the Fed Fizz, but that was because your mid laner fell that far behind. So I don't want to pinpoint one individual performance on the entire team. I think the rest of Splyce actually played well despite losing mid so hard.
Agreed.
Yeah, overall, I don't think any team is too unhappy with the first game. Also, Vitality showed that they know what to do with their team comp, but just a bit too many missteps. And overall, both teams are kind of happy, but Splyce, of course, more happy since they got the win.
Well, definitely
high-level analysis right here.
Yeah, nice one, Henning. Welcome to the team. Well,
Thank
Vitality,
you.
they are under pressure, and they need to step up in game 2, and that is right around the corner.
This could be a very interesting game with 2 different team compositions coming through.
It could, and we'll find out soon enough. It's Splyce taking on Vitality. He's going to do it again. Joko was involved in every first blood last week. Not going to pick it up yet. The Raptors are coming to help. First blood, NukeDuck. Joko gets the power unleashed. Here comes Trashy.
He's that.
Haven't stepped too far forward yet. Banshee's Veil gets popped. NukeDuck finds Chum the Waters. Scatter the weak buys a few seconds of time. Senkux goes down.
And that's the end of the game.
There's no one to defend. Vitality put up a fight, but Splyce knocked them out.